Well, welcome members to the 16th meeting of the Standards, Procedures and Public Appointments Committee. Could I remind members and others to turn off mobile phones and Blackberries and other devices like that. And if we can move to agenda item 1, a decision on taking business in private. Item 1 on today's agenda is for the committee to agree to take item 6 in private. Item 6 is for the committee to decide if any of the rules governing hybrid bills should be amended. Do members agree to take item 6 in private?
Agreed.
Yeah, thank you very much. We can move on to agenda item 2. Again, decision on taking business in private. The second item is for the committee to agree to consider our work programme in private at a future meeting. So I would invite you to agree that we consider the work programme in private in future.
Agreed.
Agreed. Right. Thank you very much indeed. If we can move on to agenda item 3, guidance on correcting inaccuracies. Now, the committee needs to consider the guidance on correcting inaccuracies because the presiding officer wrote to us inviting us to look at the current process for correcting inaccuracies in terms of transparency and general understanding. We also received a letter from Liz Smith, MSP, which is attached to the papers that you have in front of you. Now, the issues raised have mainly been about how a correction is publicised, as I see it, rather than the fact that a corrections mechanism exists, as of itself. So I think we need to look at the publication mechanism for corrections, but I think we also need to look at the guidance itself to see whether we are happy with it as it stands, or whether we feel that it could be simplified and consolidated in some way, because it seems to be in two sections at the moment, and it's maybe not as clear as it could be in that format. So if I could ask members if they have any comments on the paper from the clerks on how they think we should proceed with this matter. Brian?
Can you give us some idea when this was brought in? Because it's a relatively new thing.
Yes.
And the scale at which it was used and by whom.
Yeah.
As far as I can see, there's a certain element of redundancy in the paper in that the guidance is almost completed. I'm quite happy with what is suggested, and indeed there may well be a mechanism available to make the corrections if it's not always a correction that's been made and therefore it needs to be publicised. It depends on who's going to benefit from the publication, whether it is the members, whether it is the public, or whether it is merely the media. In terms of publication, I think there are some interesting suggestions, and we could consider them if we take your advice, which is to look at this and at some future meeting.
Yeah, just to answer your point, the corrections process and procedure only came into force in October last year, so it's only been in force for just over a year, and it's really only been used. The first use of it was in February of 2012, and there have only been about half a dozen actual corrections have been put onto the official report in the past year, with the latest one, I believe, just today. So it's not been used very much so far. That may change, of course. Helen, and
Yes.
then
Thank you very much, Convener Mayor. I think it is appropriate that the committee does have some work on this. Now, I would support the fact that this comes back to the committee for a further meeting and to be considered in the way that you have described. I think the points of Liz Smith's letter are quite important points, because she does make the key points, I think, that we have to have regard for, and that is that where there's a substantive point that's changed without Parliament having any kind of attention focused on that substantive change. I mean, I think the case in point was the jobs, revising a figure of 18,000 jobs in the renewable sector down to 11,000 jobs. And so, you know, she's right to have raised that. And I think the fact that it wasn't an isolated case as well was also very important. So I think Parliament, you know, where it's a minor error or a minor correction, I would have thought that Parliament would accept, you know, if it's some kind of a word that's maybe needs to be altered. But if it makes a substantive change to the whole message, then I really do think that Parliament needs to have that flagged up to it in a very formal way. And so I therefore would support the fact that we should do some work on this and come back to Parliament with our recommendations.
yeah, okay, thanks Helen for that. I think all of the corrections so far have all been done properly according to the procedure, and you know, the members who have raised them, you know, have been written to, and the presiding officer has been written to, including the one you refer to. So they've all followed the procedure, but I think we do need to look at the procedure just to try and sharpen it up a wee bit. Dick, I think you want to come in?
Yes, Convener, I certainly welcome your comments. I welcome the report, and I take on board the comments that Helen has made, and I welcome them also. I think there should be an opportunity for members to make corrections. You're correct in the fact that I think there's only like 5 or 6 corrections have been made in the last year, but I think there should be a mechanism in place that members, if inadvertently they have given a wrong figure in the chamber or even in a committee, they should be able to correct it, and then everyone can see it.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments from committee members at the moment? No. Will we ask the clerks then to come back to us with a paper looking at the guidance itself to see if we can consolidate it in some way and put the two sort of sections of it, you know, into one. I think that would be very, very helpful. And also with some suggestions on how we could publicise it, you know, over and above the suggestions that are already in the guidance, because I think there does need to be some mechanism where when a correction is made, it's not just in the official report, that it appears somewhere else as well. So if we could ask the clerks to come back to us with a report for our next meeting on that. Agreed. Yeah, and we'll take that meeting in private. Agreed. Okay. Could you just get me to take that in private on the record? Yes, I think the committee has agreed that we would take that meeting and that discussion in private, so we can knock around the formal words and all the rest of it, so we get it right. Yes. Yeah. Yes, okay. Thank you very much indeed. If we could move on now to agenda item 4, that's the Law Reform Working Group. The report invites the committee to consider a report from the Law Reform Working Group on the implementation of the reports of the Scottish Law Commission. And I would ask members for any comments they have on this in the first instance. What do members think about that paper? Brian? Yeah.
This has been knocking around for some time. I'm disappointed that officials didn't resolve the issue earlier. I hope that we can agree to this, and that the Symbolic Legislation Committee will also agree to changes to its remit to allow it to happen, and that they can go ahead. But we do have the logjam, and this at least is a mechanism by which some simple changes can be made. I think it's worthwhile, but it's disappointing that it's taken so long to iron out potential difficulties which existed in the minds of officials.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other comments from members? Helen?
Just to say that I support some of what Brian has said there, because I remember in my time on subordinate legislation that this issue was discussed there as well. And I do welcome the fact that the suggestion is that the subordinate legislation might be designated as a lead committee. I think that's, you know, a good suggestion. But I was also sort of taken by the fact that, you know, under paragraph E on page 14 of our papers, that it recognises that the Scottish Government, an individual MSP or a committee of the Parliament may seek to introduce a bill which implements the recommendations of a Scottish Law Commission report. I mean, that's maybe something that we should try and encourage some of our own MSP colleagues to look at. I mean, people are usually quite open to, you know, receiving suggestions for members' bills. And so to have them encouraged to do that, I mean, maybe some members haven't thought of approaching it in that way, but I think that would be very useful, because, you know, to work in partnership with the Law Commission and their exterior partners is a good way forward, I think.
Yeah, thank you very much. Any other comments? Do you feel that the report suggests that we might wish to take oral evidence on the report, the Law Reform Working Group final report, oral evidence from the Scottish Law Commission and the conveners of the Sublege and Justice Committees? Was that something the committee feels we should maybe do as we take this forward?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
yes.
we've been actively involved. I don't know that we need to take any evidence. Progress needs to be made, and that can only be made if we try this. I'm not convinced that hearing from the conveners on the committees, or indeed the Scottish Law Commission, is appropriate now. What would be more appropriate is after they've done at least a pilot to talk to those affected. I take the point made by Helen Eady that there's a rich vein available to members. I think we need to go ahead and do it first, and then review it. Perhaps using the mechanism suggested, but there's no need to review it and its recommendations in advance. It's merely going to delay its implementation.
I mean, as you'll know, I'm very keen on doing things quickly, and I've got to thank the committee for the speed with which the committee dealt with the parliamentary reform issue last year. We did it in about 3 months, and I would intend anything that we do to try to do things quickly as well. The only thing I would say in relation to that, though, is that the Law Reform Working Group consists of officials from the Scottish Parliament. This is officials, the Scottish Government and the Scottish Law Commission. So the conveners of the Justice and Sublege Committees haven't had any input into this. So it may be courteous to give them an opportunity to come and sort of give us their views before we move forward. Helen, you wanted to come in?
Yes, I think that's, you know, I hear what Brian's saying, but I think that's right. I mean, I think it's appropriate just to, in case there's something that we've not picked up on elsewhere, that, you know, the conveners and others maybe have got a point to raise. And I think, you know, when you read through the report, I mean, one of the points, obviously, of the concerns that, you know, when the Scottish Government, it says in the report, might not always be able to provide support for a member either, who wanted to bring forward a bill you know, arising from the Law Commission. So, you know, there's a lot of issues that we need to tease out and just find out, you know, what support is going to be there, what support would it be for the Sublege Committee and all the other partners who might be involved in this. So just to be absolutely sure that there's not something that we're overlooking, that would be a very diplomatic way to approach it.
Dick?
Yes, convener, I would certainly welcome. I think we should be able to put this into a work programme and also, you know, we should get, you know, the members along, Sublege, etc., in order to feel what they feel about this report.
Okay, thank you. Any other views or comments? Are you happy then that Brian, are you okay with inviting the convener of Justice and Sublege just to give their views as they haven't been asked already?
They have been asked.
Sorry?
In a previous life, I engaged with both, and so they are fully aware of the proposal. They have been engaged in this process and the consideration of this process. But up to now, there has been, I would agree, perhaps more engagement from officials who, so in my view, some fairly spurious grounds for delay. And I think that we should go ahead and at least agree a pilot programme. I'm not sure that bringing the conveners before the committee will add anything to this. And it's certainly not that they have been ignored, because they have not.
Thank you for that. What if we were to ask the clerks to actually start pulling together the standing order changes and all the kind of mechanics of the thing that we would need to do, which will have to be done anyway, which will take a wee bit of time. You know, it's going to be into the new year now. If we ask the clerks to do that now, so that work could be progressing, and we could invite the conveners early in the new year to come to us, so there's going to be, that wouldn't then give any delay.
Yes, yes, yes.
Members,
Yes.
I'm seeing a lot of nodding of heads, and will we do it that way? Thank you very much. One other issue is, should we invite other conveners to write to us? You know, should we write to them and just ask if they have any comments?
Yes.
As well?
Yes. Yes, I think
and that could be done in the same, you know, we'll give them a deadline to get back to us fairly quickly if they do. Yeah, I agree to that as well. Okay, thank you very much indeed. If we can now move on to item 5, which is the Scottish Public Service Ombudsman Special Reports. The convener of the Local Government and Regeneration Committee has asked us to examine the parliamentary procedure for considering special reports laid by the Scottish Public Services Ombudsman, or SPSO. So you have the paper in front of you, and I just wonder if you have any comments or how you think we should respond to the LGR committee. We do have options. If you look at the paper, there is a view that the Parliamentary Bureau can already refer special reports to the relevant committee, which wouldn't require a rule change. Or, you know, new rules could be created to make it absolutely clear in standing orders how such reports should be handled. So I just wondered what you would want to do about that. Would you want to maybe initially consider writing to the SPSO or the LGR committee asking for further information, given that in the report it is pretty clear that the Bureau can already kind of deal with this, so to ask why they feel that we should introduce new rules, would that be something that members might favour? Yeah. Helen?
Yes, I mean, I think I support that. I mean, it does seem to be, the point is made by the Ombudsman that he has argued that a formal mechanism is desirable to provide clarity, and I think that that's something that would be good for us to understand, you know, what his views are about that. So I think you're absolutely right. If we just, you know, tease that out a bit more to find out, you know, what is it that he feels hasn't worked properly in the past.
Yeah.
You know, what difference would this make? I mean, I've always been of the view that all the annual reports that we've had from public service agencies should be a matter of, you know, much more intensive probing than perhaps we had done in the past. But certainly because the SPSO's reports are always fairly high profile, and you know, I can remember some occasions when you know, Alex Neil and other ministers, when you were in opposition, really took up the cudgels against the then SPSOs, and I really feel that, you know, it's maybe something that we always need to keep a good political eye on that, because at the end of the day, for a lot of members of the public, it's the last port of call in the process for getting what they believe to be justice. So it is a very important area. So it'd be good to find out a bit more what the SPSO's thinking is.
Are the members happy with that approach, that we'll ask them to come back to us and just expand a wee bit then? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Well, that ends the public part of our meeting, and we'll now move into private session.